Welcome back, Getting to Know You fans, to episode 6 in season 3. I am your host, Jen Dawson, Petrus Associate Director of Educational Programs, and I am delighted to be joined by Dr. Yakir Levin. He's a dermatologist and instructor at Harvard Medical School, Department of Dermatology. He also treats patients at Massachusetts General Hospital, and he's an investigator at the Wellman Center for Photomedicine. Thank you so much for being with me today, Dr. Levin. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really an honor to be here.
So, as is tradition on our show, the first question we always ask is, how did you become a dermatologist? What led you down this path?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a story. I won't go into too much detail, but it may sound trite, but of course I wanted to become a physician in order to help people who had needs that perhaps I could meet, perhaps I couldn't, but either way, I wanted to do my best to help them. My background was more quantitative in engineering. I did a doctoral degree in electrical engineering alongside medical school. And in deciding what specialty to choose, I really fell in love with dermatology when I was doing my clinical rotations. I hadn't really thought about it before, but it just struck me as a field where we saw all kinds of diseases affecting people's lives in many different ways, and got to approach their diseases in many different ways. So it was just very intellectually stimulating, and also an opportunity, as it's turned out, a wonderful opportunity to sort of combine my engineering and scientific interests with my clinical passion.
And okay, so talk to me about how you're combining those two passions.
So as you mentioned in the introduction, I practice clinically in the clinical department of dermatology with a subspecialty in treating children with life-altering skin conditions, often using lasers, but not exclusively. My research at the Wellman Center for Photomedicine in many ways focuses on the same conditions, using animal models and also tissue or samples from human skin to try to understand the conditions better and to try to come up with better ways of treating them. So that's using lasers, cooling, other diagnostic tests, all of which I'm very familiar from my scientific work. So that's how I get to combine it, and it's very rewarding.
That is amazing. I'm always impressed when those two things can come together. So talk a little bit about that work, and what are some like big wins you've had or big discoveries you've had?
So that's a great question. And I'd say that, things that I hadn't really thought about coming into even becoming a dermatologist was the opportunity to work with children. I've always loved children, and I was called a Pied Piper as a kid because I was the kid who wanted to babysit other people's kids the most. Even now, as my own kids get older, I sometimes hang out with some of my colleagues' kids, but just because I enjoy it. And I didn't realize, even during my residency, because we didn't have a large pediatric dermatology cohort in our institution, just how significant these conditions are that affect children. Of course, I was aware of port wine birthmarks and many common and uncommon congenital malformations, but I only became more sensitive to it really when doing my subspecialty training, and people were coming to see my mentor, Dr. Rox Anderson, to treat these life-altering conditions. And so that really opened my eyes. Very surprising to me that on the one hand, these could affect people's lives so much, and on the other hand, that we didn't really have great treatments for them. I wish I could say that I've found the magic bullet for any of them, but the fun part, and I haven't yet, but the fun part is being able to try a lot of different types of approaches using existing and sometimes technologies that are not yet clinically available to try to improve the lives of patients with these conditions.
I would imagine that can be really rewarding, even though you're not having, like you said, that instantaneous, discovery or win. You're still on this path that's constantly moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it fun to get up in the morning and go to work, and to mix my clinical passions and research passions, and hopefully to help kids. Who doesn't want to do that?
Right? I know. Feels like every day I read something on some blog or some news article where a child is being affected by a disease that's either rare or it isn't well studied. And it makes me even more thankful for all the good work that you and the rest of the investigators within PEDRA and outside of PEDRA are doing to help these children overcome these diseases. What are some of the biggest challenges you've experienced in research?
There's certain challenges that everybody faces, and it can be difficult to sort of come to terms with the fact that these are actually just normal parts of research life. When you do an experiment and you try really hard, and your experiment doesn't work, and you try many ways, and sometimes you just can't get the setup to work, and you have to try some other way of setting it up. Sometimes the setup works perfectly, but the hypothesis that you were hoping to test and confirm turns out that you couldn't confirm it. So you spent a lot of time setting up an experiment or doing an experiment, and then it turns out that you didn't solve the holy grail, so to speak. You didn't move the needle even all that much, and I think that was a challenge that I had to overcome, to really learn that that's part of the discovery process, and to take enjoyment in the fact that I enjoy the process of doing it and not just the outcomes. I think that's been one thing that's hard. On the clinical side, I'll say another thing that's hard is, since the conditions that we treat, that I treat, are often very rare, patients are often unaware that I might be able to help them. I certainly can't guarantee that I can help them, but are unaware that there might be treatments, and conversely, even when we know that there might be good treatments, sometimes their health insurance coverage is not good enough. Their insurance company doesn't cover it. And even when we file appeals and really work to try to get that coverage, I'll say that being at my institution, I'm lucky because I'm afforded the opportunity where I can treat people even if I don't get the reimbursement for the institution or for myself, within bounds. I mean, I'm sure if I weren't be able to bill for most of the things I do, then I'd run into trouble. But for now, I'm able to treat conditions even when people aren't able to pay for them, which isn't a luxury that someone in private practice might have if they have a significant overhead.
Yeah, and I'm sensing that really helps fulfill you personally too, with your love of children and being able to have that flexibility to treat, even though the money component is just doesn't need to be dealt with, like just put it aside,
Right.
treat the child. That's got to feel
Exactly.
good.
For children and their parents, they all get my cell phone number. No one's abused it, but they send me pictures, follow-up pictures, questions, and just being involved in a process where we're working to help their child and have as close to a normal development as possible, psychosocial development. It's really just an honor to be able to do that.
Shifting gears a little bit, I know that you are going to be joining us at PEDRA in November, and you're going to be speaking in our Magic Wand sessions. Can you talk a little bit about the Magic Wand program kind of as a whole, like the 50,000-foot view?
So the Magic Wand program is a really exciting program. It was founded by my mentor, Dr. Rox Anderson, and by a good friend and colleague, Dr. Lilit Garibian. To really teach clinicians and make clinicians aware of the process of innovation. Clinicians who are encountering problems every day are a source of sharing those problems to people who can do something about it through scientific research. Sometimes it's the clinician themselves who can do something about it with scientific research. And clinicians today are, under a lot of stress and in terms of seeing the number of patients that they need to see, writing clinical notes, meeting certain benchmarks. Over time, they've kind of lost sight or never were not even aware of the opportunity to have an impact beyond their particular day-to-day practice. So the Magic Wand program aims to teach people about finding a clinical problem worth solving, how you identify that problem, how you characterize that problem, and how you go about taking steps to try to solve the problem. So there's a whole chain of innovation, and that's what we aim to do with the Magic Wand. I'm privileged to be involved in it as the co-chair of the virtual Magic Wand program, which is a internet-based course to teach clinicians about this. And I'm certainly happy to hear from any clinicians who might be interested in that as well.
That's wonderful. It sounds like an incredible initiative, and it sounds like a great way to really move the field as a whole forward.
Yes, yes, I think so very much. And what I've observed both in my own experience going through the innovation process and observing what some of the participants in the course have gone on to do is that sort of a whole vista of opportunity is open to them. Sometimes it's an industry collaboration, sometimes it's a scientific collaboration, sometimes it's empowering the clinician themselves to go about doing clinical research to address their problem. But it's just been, I think, very rewarding for many participants, and certainly rewarding for me to be able to do that.
That's really wonderful. I can't wait to dive into the particulars at the conference. I don't want to give too much away here, but I know it's going to be a really valuable session for all of our members and attendees. I know we're getting close to our time, but I wondered if there's a personal tidbit about yourself you'd like to share.
I guess that's a great question. I guess I'll say a couple of things, one related to my clinical practice and one not so much. One is that the pickleball has taken the world by storm. And it's something that, my wife and I play together. I enjoy table tennis. She enjoys tennis. So this is somehow a way for us to work together somewhere in between. And we recently learned that two of our children like playing pickleball with us. So now we found a new family activity. We can play doubles pickleball together. And that's really nice to be able to combine some physical exercise with some family time. Another one kind of more related to my clinical practice is that I really like to bond with these kids when I see them, and I've taken not always at the first visit, but bringing a toy, a book, things that I've enjoyed from giving to my own kids to share with these other children.
Oh, I really love that. The spirit of family and support just comes right out of you in your every aspect of our conversation. And I wish we had another half hour to talk more. This has been really lovely. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. I think PEDRA is such a wonderful organization. I wish I had established a relationship and knew about PEDRA sooner. But
you've come to us now, so it must have been at the right time. It's really, you're such an asset to the network. We're so happy to have you here. And I appreciate all you've already started doing for PEDRA in your short time involved with us.
Thank you so much. Really an honor to speak with you.
A very special thank you to Dr. Levin for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed learning about him and his interests. And I hope that you can attend the upcoming annual PEDRA conference in Atlanta, November 9th through the 11th, to hear him and other speakers talk about the Magic Wand Initiative. For more information about that, you can visit pedraresearch.org. And you can also check us out on our social media channels, Twitter, Instagram @PEDRA Research, and Facebook also @PEDRA Research. Thanks for watching.